everyone, and welcome to this, our fourth and final webinar of the Women's Webinar Series here at MasterStart. My name is Michaela Thomas, and I'm here in the marketing team. And I just want to say a warm welcome to everyone who is joining in this morning, taking the time. It is definitely a Wednesday morning. I'm sure Duwa will agree with me. Best laid plans of mice and men. But we are, of course, just going to go with the flow. We're going to take a deep breath, and we're really going to enjoy the session this morning and our time together. So I've popped already a first question for you guys in the chat, which is saying hello to your fellow attendees, and then sharing a bit more about where you're joining from. Tell us, we'd love to know where you're beaming in from, as they'd say in Star Trek. But I'm a nerd, so that's okay. So just before we get started, I want to remind everyone a bit about our house rules. So we're going to have a fantastic webinar speaker, of course, Duwa, on your screen today. She'll take us through the presentation, your presentation, and it's going to be a fantastic one. What's going to happen is that's going to take place, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So please keep all your questions right till the end. We have a few interactions, a few videos for you today. So it's going to be a high-tech sesh, which is what I love. We see some lovely people from Namibia, from Lesotho. That is fantastic. Hi, everyone. Really good to see you. Hope that this isn't your first one, that you're joining in from a couple of ones. Yeah, just to remind you guys a bit more about MasterStart, I'm going to share my screen, and then I'll just go over the topic and get started. There we go. So today's topic is breaking barriers through mentorship, why every voice matters. And I think this is an incredibly powerful and pertinent topic, and one that I just am so looking forward to getting stuck into with Duwa. And yeah, this is very exciting. So again, welcome to our webinar. Who are we at MasterStart? What are we about? So at MasterStart, we're here to help your employees and teams reach their full potential as future business leaders by providing practical and relevant upskilling and reskilling online courses. So we're in the business of online education. In collaboration with leading business schools and industry experts, we offer a supportive and connected learning environment that fosters peer-to-peer learning and creates a fun and meaningful community. Oops. Slip there. I think one of the most important things for us is just really making sure that you understand that human connection is at the root of everything. And that's what makes learning so exciting. And it's what we're doing today, connecting with each other online and sharing amazing thoughts and ideas. So don't forget, if you want to learn more about us, you can join us for a rewarding learning experience that is directly applicable in your workplace, which is also very important. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say hello to Duwa, ask her to introduce herself, tell us a bit more about herself, and then I'm going to share the slides for today. So if you hear her talk to me, I am here, just changing the slides for her, but no worries. And yeah, Duwa, over to you. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to everybody who's from all over the world. It's amazing to see where everybody's saying they're from at the moment. So first, I want to say, obviously, good morning. And who am I? My name is Duwa Mutharika. I'm a leadership and executive coach. And I like to say that I help women of color in leadership positions to heal and set healthy boundaries so that they can show up as themselves unapologetically. I'm also a mentor with G4G South Africa. I'm a non-executive director in charge of the fundraising committee. I'm also a monitoring and evaluation member and the founder of G4G Malawi chapter. I'm a mother of one biological child and one bonus daughter, and I consider myself a professional auntie to many, many more. So, and I'll tell you more about that as we go further along, and I tell you about my journey as a mentor. So the first thing, Michaela, if you can start with the poll, please.
Give me a second. Flipping through several screens has taken my brain a bit too far. All right. So you wanted to ask where people are from?
Yes, I'm seeing quite a bit where people are from. But if you haven't already put in the chat where you're from, please can you put in the chat where you are from? I'm seeing Malawi. I'm seeing Joburg. I'm seeing Joburg. Wait, Joburg's winning. Joburg for the win. Thank you, Joburg, for the support. Thank you, Malawi, for the support as well. Where else are we seeing? I saw Lesotho earlier, which got me excited. Namibia. Oh, goodness. Kenya. Wonderful. Cape Town. I hope the weather is pretty good over there. We've got a little bit of sunshine, not too much here in Joburg. Wonderful. Okay, we can do the next poll question.
Okay, give me a second. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pop a question in the chat, and we want you to make use of the lovely keyboard in front of you. So our first one is from Duwa, and she's asking, what word or phrase comes to mind? There we go. My power just beeped back on. Load shedding, gotta love it, but now it's back. So yeah, what word or phrase comes to mind when you hear the word mentor?
Guidance. We've got guidance, guider, guidance. These are good ones. Using my skills to develop others. I love that, Nadia. Support from Natalie. Empowerment from Anati. Simolo says coaching. Aletu says, I guide you because I have walked this road before. That's a good one. Empowerment, support structure, support, opportunity. Wonderful. Okay, these are great. Thank you guys so much for participating in that. A lot of guidance, which is good, which means that we're all on the same page and we know about mentoring. So, so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about mentoring as a solution for breaking through the barriers women in leadership are facing. And then I'm going to talk about a case study, which is G4G, an organization that helps to create a pipeline of women leaders. So we can go to the next slide, Michaela.
Sure, give me a second.
No problem.
You should see the screen, and let's go from beginning.
There we go. There we go. So first thing that we're going to discuss is what is the current status of women in leadership? Okay. So the challenge is that although women can vote and run for public office in nearly every country, they're seriously underrepresented in legislative bodies as heads of states, in C-suite and nonprofit leadership. This means they're not in the areas where people make decisions. They're not the decision makers. So the opportunity is that although the gender gap is wide, it is closing slowly but steadily. But we want to be able to accelerate this progress by mobilizing women leaders to inspire and support the next generation to play a greater role in public leadership. So let's break this down. Despite record-breaking numbers of women in public office in 2018 and increasing public attention around gender equality in Hollywood, we all remember the Me Too movement, women remain underrepresented in senior leadership roles across industry. This is just a fact. So business leaders need to recognize the importance of elevating women to an equal status at work. It is important. Policies need to be created that company can adopt to bridge the gap for women in business, including offering and expanding access to paid sick days, paid family leave, comprehensive paid medical leave, childcare services. So there's a huge cost to this not happening because gender discrimination, which starts in childhood, continues to rob children of their childhoods and limit their chances. This disproportionately affects the world's girls. A girl is far more likely to be denied her rights, kept from school, forced to marry, subjected to violence, her voice underrated and undervalued, if it's heard at all. This assault on childhood also deprives nations of the energy and talent they need to progress. So women face many barriers and biases to taking leadership roles in our personal and professional lives. Gender inequality, which is the fifth of the 17 social development goals established by the UN in 2015, states that we are supposed to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. But this is not happening. We know this. So McKinsey & Co., a company out of the United States, does a workplace poll every year of about 40,000 employees in about I think it's 333 organizations. And what they get from that is what they call the Women in the Workplace report. They've been doing this for 8 years running. And although the research is mainly on women in the US, I think it's indicative of what's happening around the world. I think we can agree to that. So one of the things that's happening is women leaders are switching jobs at higher rates amidst what is being called the great breakup. Companies are struggling to retain female leaders due to a broken rung. And that broken rung is basically the first rung that you take on a ladder to get on the ladder to management. That rung is broken for a lot of women. And this is more pronounced for women of color. So one of the things that we should know is women, although just as ambitious as their male counterparts, are leaving because it's harder for them to advance. Okay, so some of the reasons for this is they face microaggressions, such as their judgment being questioned, or they're doing more to support employee well-being or foster inclusion, but this work is often unrewarded. So that means you're doing your professional work plus the work of making the office a better place to be, and you're being stretched thin. I know I'm preaching to the choir here for some. And finally, it's increasingly important to women leaders that they work for companies that promote flexibility, employee well-being, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which we call DEI, right? We can do the next slide, please, Michaela. All right, so let's talk about the pink elephant in the room, hey? Gender inequality. What does that look like? Okay. And so society has different types of inequality towards women. These cause biases and discrimination. And just in the United States, they're saying at the current rate of change right now, we will achieve gender equality in 200 years. In the United States, they'll achieve gender equality in 200 years. So I've not yet found the research on other parts of the world, but I would shudder to think what that would be for us here on the continent, right? Major causes for gender inequality is the lack of awareness among women about their rights and their ability to achieve equality. For a lot of people, this is the way it's always been done. This is the way we've always done it. So why would I even think there could be something different? And this is due to prevailing cultural and social norms, which dictate that women should be subservient to men. So gender inequality, we're looking at things like internalized. And this is gender in gender unequal beliefs that an individual holds within themselves. That's the internalized. Interpersonal, that's sexist behavior from one person to another. You treat somebody differently because of the gender that they identify with. Systemic, systems and structures that uphold gender inequality at every level. Collective, societal norms and cultures that normalize and condone gender inequality within a community. And institutional, policies and practices that reinforce gender inequality within an organization or workplace. You can go to the next one. Right. So that leaves us with too many glass ceilings that remain unbroken. So if we look at gender inequality and the barriers for women into leadership, what are some of the barriers? Well, one of the first things, the qualities of a leader, as well as the path to achieve leaderships, are still largely based on outdated male models that shut women out. You know, what do you think about when you hear the word leader? And typically, when we were growing up, I'm going to say this for me, I'm a 70s baby, I'm aging myself here, but the archetype of a leader is a male who must surmount a Herculean task to motivate others to their death. You know, sit and think of the guy from, I can't remember his name, but there was a movie and it was Mel Gibson, and it's like, they can take away our land, but they can't take our freedom. And everybody rushes with him into battle, into their deaths. That's what we thought of as a leader. So definitely in my day-to-day life, I'm not going to think like, where am I going? You know, I'm sitting here in the middle of Joburg. Where am I rushing to our deaths? You know, for a sale at the mall. You know, so that doesn't add up. And then second is old stereotypes. Okay, so because men have been the majority of leaders for so long, the traits associated with leadership are often thought of as masculine and not viewed as favorable when exhibited by women. So think of every Marvel movie that you've ever seen, any of these hero movies, like even the one I was speaking to before, that's the type of thing. So it's not quote unquote feminine, right? An interesting fact is that women, often with women, especially I've seen on the African continent, is they exhibit a different type of leadership, which is collective leadership, okay? And a lot of that, if you're from sub-Saharan Africa, comes from our nature of Ubuntu, or as it's also in the Bantu language, Umuntu. I am because you are. What I do affects those around me, all right? So then another thing that causes a barrier for women to leadership is that men still surpass women in having the networks to learn about the opportunities and find mentors and sponsors to champion their advancement. This is the old boys club, the golfing and the fishing trips, and the kind of team things that are done that are not necessarily inclusive all of the time to women or minorities. So then the next issue that causes the barriers is sexual harassment, hostile work environments, and subtle biases are still obstacles. Women of color face even further obstacles to advancement, and as a result, are less likely to move into leadership roles. The recent Me Too movement showed that sexual harassment is still prevalent in many workplaces. I don't even think the work with the Me Too movement has begun to be over. And I think as time goes, more and more industries will have shakeups like that. But at least with Hollywood being so visible, we were able to see what was going on behind the veil. And then finally, balancing work and family can be a challenge that limits women from seeking leadership roles. Workplaces are still designed decades-old notion of male and female domestic roles. If you want to read a book that really brings this to light, it's Indriya Nuhi's book, My Life in Full. She's the former CEO of Pepsi, and she details all the sacrifices she had to make it to the top and stay at the top. And I think that's very, very indicative of what's going on. So one of the things that also happens that's a barrier to leadership with women is sometimes when a woman finally gets into a leadership role, okay, she's broken that glass ceiling. Yay. We're like, power to you, sister. It turns out to be a glass cliff. What's a glass cliff, you ask? Well, a glass cliff is a situation in which a woman or a member of a minority group transcends to a leadership position in a challenging circumstance where the risk of failure is high. Some would say Theresa May's ascent to PM of UK, to be the PM of the United Kingdom, was a glass cliff situation. She was never going to win because she was coming in, cleaning up from another situation, etc., and so forth. So that's a glass cliff. So sometimes women finally make it to leadership, but it's a situation where it's unattainable and they're not going to win. The next slide, please. All right. So important thing I want to stop and do is kind of just define gender bias, because this is a huge barrier to women ascending in leadership. Okay. So here we see the definition: a person receiving different treatment based on a person's real or perceived gender identity. Gender bias exists when a person faces unfair disadvantages or benefits from unearned advantages because of their gender. An example of gender biases would be when we refer to a person by their occupation, like say the construction workers we see here, or an engineer, and the assumption automatically is that person is male. Males, however, are also not immune to gender bias. Teachers of young children are often believed to be women, okay? So biases come in many forms, and they cause us to prejudice, they cause us to form prejudice against others. And in a way, it is what helps us to categorize or make sense of the world around us. But as we obviously know, it's now becoming our prejudice becoming hindrance to other people. So gender bias is often form of unconscious or implicit bias. It happens when somebody unintentionally attributes certain aspects or stereotypes to someone else. For example, men may be considered more analytical and less emotional, and as a result, they have a better chance of being hired when these skills are required. Gender bias is often seen as preferential treatment men receive. That's because in the workplace, it works mainly to their favor. So, gender discrimination is experienced by 42% of women at work, and 90% of senior leaders are men, while only 25% of CEOs are women. So, gender bias can start as early as the recruitment strategy. Unfortunately, both male and female leaders are twice as likely to hire men than they are as women. In addition, a lot of job ads contain words that appeal mainly to men, like dominant, confident, analyze, decisive, strong, outspoken. Some women don't feel spoken to by these words. As a result, they refrain from even applying. In addition, women tend to want to meet 100% of the qualifications asked for. Yet men, if they apply, will only have about 60%. And this bias then continues through talent management, succession planning, and deciding who's going to be part of the succession planning, which means there's less chances for in most systems for women to become leaders. There's also huge gender bias in media portrayal of women, especially as it pertains to leadership. And we can discuss the different standards that we see being set for male versus female leaders. Think of former Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, who resigned basically due to burnout. She said to quote her, she no longer had enough to fill the tank. And this really, for me, started an important conversation about the price women pay for leadership. And then, if you want to look at the different standards again that male and female are being held to, you look at Finland's Sanna Marin, the youngest PM at the time, who's chastised worldwide for dancing and enjoying herself with friends at a private party. How many men have we seen do that? And by the way, I've been around male leaders my whole life, and I would like to state on record that her party was tame. So, next slide. All right, so now we're going to get to the reason why we're here. Why is mentoring important? Okay, why should we care about mentoring? Well, mentoring can be looked at as a way to close that leadership gap that we're talking about here. If you're a woman, it's a good way to seek out skill building opportunities in leadership training, and mentoring can give that to you. Okay, so one of the first ways we're saying is with leadership development. It's a great way to develop leadership skills, especially in a safe environment. Most of the mentoring type of programs you'll do, it's supposed to be a safe space. So senior leaders pass on knowledge and key learnings to less experienced or new leaders. Sharing challenges and facilitating a support system is an effective way of training people. All right. So why is mentoring important? The second reason, women in leadership, it can be used to empower women and support women in their careers. With gender inequality in senior leadership roles in many organizations worldwide, mentoring can guide and inspire women at crucial stages in their career. Sit and think of what I said earlier about that broken rung. If somebody had a mentor at that point, it may be the very thing to help fix that rung if they had a proper mentor at that time. Think about what I was saying about the glass cliff. A lot of the issues with the glass cliff is a woman is out there on her own without a lot of support. So imagine at a moment like that, having a mentor, what that would do for a leader. So mentoring is also important because of diversity and inclusion. Mentoring can support the DEI efforts as individuals from underrepresented groups like women can be mentored and supported, which is proven to improve their representation at management level. And then finally, skill sharing. Mentoring can lead to upskilling for leaders. So one of the benefits of being mentored or even mentoring others is the potential for growth. All right, so what is mentoring? The next slide, please, Michaela. What is mentoring? Okay, there's there's a couple of ways that you can mentor. There's structured versus unstructured, formal versus informal. So mentoring has different purposes and goals, such as getting women into leadership or women empowerment. And mentoring is the act of guiding. Remember, I asked you at the beginning, what one word comes to mind? And so many of you said guiding, so well done. A lot of you said supporting, which is the next thing that mentoring is, and counseling, which you also said. So well done to everybody. So this is vastly different from coaching, and it's fundamentally teaching. However, the objective is slightly different. Mentorship is more voluntary in nature, and it's less formal than coaching. The mentor and protege endeavor on a broad development goal like becoming a leader, and mentoring encompasses many complex areas of development. Mentoring doesn't need extensive training, but you might be trained in a certain methodology. So the difference between formal and informal mentoring. Mentoring is an established relationship for the purposes of learning, personal and or career development. Formalized mentoring takes place in many organizations such as businesses, schools, universities to support and facilitate the growth of individuals. Informal mentoring is mentorship that evolves organically, almost like a friendship with friends, with colleagues. That's informal mentorship. They're people you turn to for advice who challenge you. So in the beginning of my talk, I know I said that I was a professional auntie. So I look at myself, although I'm also a mentor, I look at myself as an informal mentor to a lot of young ladies. And I'm trying to right the wrongs to that a lot of my aunties I felt they were kind of harsh. So I'm trying to be there for the next generation. So I'm going to take a break here before I go on to my story of mentoring. And I want to ask you to put in the chat box, what type of mentoring relationships have you had before? What type of mentoring have you been exposed to? Was it formal? Was it informal? If you could start putting that in the chat for me, please. Okay. Natalie's saying both formal and informal, structured, formal and informal, from Connie. Formal and informal. Okay. Wonderful. That's great. I'm glad that so many people have so much exposure to something that I love so much. So the next slide, please. My story. I'm going to give you my story here. I had mentored before I heard about G4G, and I enjoyed it. But the program kind of said, meet with your mentee, at least a couple of times a month, talk about whatever you need to talk about there. Well, there wasn't a specific goal, rather than helping these young students transition from high school to university, right? So I kind of had to make up my own rules as I went along as a mentor, but I'm glad to say that my mentee and I are still in communication with each other 8 years on, and I love her to death. So to give you my story, I felt called one of the mornings in my quiet, private time. I felt called to become a coach, a mentor, and a counselor. And I did not know what that would look like. And as a coach, it became my profession. As a counselor, as I told you, I'm a professional auntie to many, many. And so I kind of wondered, what am I going to do with this mentoring thing, right? I knew it would be voluntary, and I knew it would have to tie into my value of giving back to women, especially on the African continent. And I knew I wanted it to make impact. Like it had to do something more than we're just chatting, And so what is kind of funny, and this just goes to show, be open to get information from everywhere, is it took a man, my job coach, to kind of show me what my purpose was. And he's like, you want to work with women and leadership. And I remember looking at him going, okay. And he was right. But I was like, how did I not see what was right in front of my face? Because everything in my life had been leading up to that. So let me tell you how I first came into mentoring as I look at mentoring right now, where I'm mentoring to put women into leadership. I met a lovely lady named Geshi, and we were doing not a secret Santa, we were doing a Santa thing in 2021 where we were gathering uh, different bags, etc., for orphanages, and we were fundraising, etc. And she was a lovely lady, and she told me about she was mentoring, and she kind of threw it out there, and I just kind of listened, and I was like, yeah, that's great, because I'd been burnt. I tried to join a couple of mentoring organizations, and nothing happened, and I was just like, I'm done with this. I don't know how this is going to happen. I'm just going to be everybody's auntie. And so eventually, I there was a day where she asked me to come in and speak at her cohort, and I came in and I spoke. And she said, "You can stay for a while and see what we do here." And I was like, "Okay, I'll stay and see what you do." And the lady who was facilitating that day asked us to draw a representation of who we were. Now, normally, I would have drawn a round circle with many different legs, about 8 of them, because I thought of myself as a spider. And why did I think of myself as a spider? Because the spider sits in the corner up there of the room, watches what's going on, and only comes down when it's safe. I thought of myself as a spider because the last thing I wanted to do was draw attention to myself. And my reason for that is coming from the family and the background that I come from, a very political family, in the limelight, constantly in a fishbowl. I was tired. I moved to South Africa for peace and quiet. The last thing I wanted to do was do anything that was going to draw attention to myself. So I thought of myself as a spider. But that day, I drew I drew the round circle and I did the legs, but there were more than 8 legs. And I did it in yellow. And that's when I realized I was meant to be the sun. So I was meant to shine light in the dark places. And I could no longer hide in corners. And it was my job to help people come out of the shadows into the light. And I realized that my experiences, my background were actually a plus. They get me indoors, they allow me to break protocols at time in order to be a voice for other people. It gives me visibility. I realized the very thing I was running from in the past, which I was so frightened of being mistreated for, I now could lean into and use this influence for good. So I became a mentor in South Africa. And pretty quickly after becoming a mentor, I knew I had to do this in Malawi. And so you can see from the pictures, there's one of me. There's 3 very different types of places that I've been mentoring. The first big picture was me in Malawi when we started our first cohort. The second one is at an accounting firm. And the third one is with the young ladies that I mentored in Tembisa. How has my life changed from mentoring? I've made new friends. I found my purpose and found my mission and began to live my purpose. And I've widened my network. So my mission now is simply put to put more women who look like me into leadership positions at national level in parliament, public and private sector. Because when that happens, and only when that happens, will we be able to transform this continent where women are doing the lion's share of the work, but receiving a small portion of the benefits. And I'm pretty unapologetic about this. I'm almost 50 now, so it's not up for debate. I work for women with women. I realized early on I can't be all things to everyone, but I want to break down those barriers. And I really believe that the work with mentorship will do that. So this is where I concentrate my influence and impact. If we can go to the next slide, please, Michaela. All right. So this slide is what we say in G4G. It's called My Sister's Keeper. I know you're all muted at the moment, but I'd like you to take some time to say this with me so you understand how we bring everybody into the room and bring everyone into sisterhood at the beginning of every session that we have. So let's start. I am my sister's keeper. I will build my sister up, encourage her, empower her, and pray for her. I have no reason to talk about her, tear her down, be jealous of her, or to compete with her. I'm going to stand behind her and help push her into her destiny. Thank you. So let's go to the next slide. So I've told you about the barriers to women in leadership. I've told you about my story, to my leadership story and my mentoring story. And now I'm just going to give you a little bit of a quick background of a case study, which is G4G, which is where I mentor. So the background is G4G was born at Harvard Kennedy School in 2016. So the way the story goes, legend has it, as we'd say, there were some women who were there, and they were from all over the world, and they were volunteering on Hillary Clinton's campaign. And what they noticed and they heard about was that she had to actually be convinced to run. And when she didn't win, we know how things went with history. They felt so frustrated, and they're like, what are we going to do? And they're like, well, something is holding women back from leading in the public sphere. So they decided to create Girls for Girls. Because the thought was that if there's any change that needs to be made in our countries, we need public leaders that understand, who understand the public agenda, who understand how important it is. And thus we need women as decision makers in public and private sectors. So we need to believe, what I like about G4G is we believe in the voices of young women, their hopes and their aspirations and their power to change the world. This is why every voice matters. Each voice that is found creates another crack in the seemingly large brick wall that holds women out of certain places. It's another crack in the glass ceiling. It fixes the broken rung that we talked about earlier, and it creates a bridge for a woman on a glass cliff to her support. So, the next slide, please. So G4G has some ambitious targets and goals. We are unabashedly creating a pipeline of leaders by 2025. We say we want 1,000 mentees, 10,000 mentors. We want women and girls to gain confidence, to take action, to change their lives, to impact their communities. And we measure impact. You probably wonder, well, how do you measure impact? We measure impact by how the girls grab the horns of leadership opportunities, how they take up positions, and how they decide to influence decisions and policies and resources, and also how they pay it forward. The mentees often become mentors. So examples of evidence are young women taking action to change their lives and empowerment. The examples include applying for senior jobs they may not have thought of doing before, running for office, setting up initiatives and campaigns to tackle issues in their communities, increase productivity, visibility, and giving voice to key issues and promotions. So as I said earlier, sorry, I didn't say earlier, but we are now in 27 countries. Sorry, can you go back to the slide before that says background and missions, just so I can say this? So it's in 27 countries, trained over 1,540 mentors, and 8,000 mentees have graduated. So let's go to the one after targets and goals. Okay, G4G guiding principles and core beliefs. Leadership requires courage, vision, and skills. Women in leadership have a multiplier effect. Mentorship is a voluntary act of paying forward. There's power in our stories. The whole point of this is to tell our stories, to give a voice to those stories. Harnessing the collective power of effort makes us stronger. You don't have to go it alone. You've got your sisters with you. We value the voice of young women, their hopes, aspirations, and dreams, and we are our sister's keeper. If you could please show the video. So I'm going to show you a wonderful young lady who I had who I had the pleasure of being one of her mentors. So please, can you watch what she has to say about what mentorship did for her?
Sure. And let me know, guys, if you can hear the
You got muted for a second. Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Yes, absolutely gorgeous young lady. Love her to bits. So we'll go to the next one, program framework.
Sure, give me a second. Let me just reshare my screen.
And so we mentor on Saturday mornings. So if you're wondering what gets me up on a Saturday morning when I would rather be asleep, it's young girls like her. They're sweet little faces. Just, I love them to bits. Yeah. So somebody was asking, sorry, in the chat room, please confirm if Botswana is one of the countries. Yes, it is. It's 100% is. Yeah, it is. Was everybody able to see the video? Sorry, somebody's saying they didn't see the video. Was that just
Oh dear. If that was the case, don't worry. We'll share it in the email that fires off after the session.
Most were able to see it, but it will be shared in the email. All right. Wonderful. So the program framework. So the program framework is 3-tiered: mentorship, inspiration and learning, and networking. So mentorship is local learning and support communities for small groups of promising young women led by an accomplished woman leader. And these have circles. These circles are anchored in schools, workplaces, neighborhood, and other community spaces. The circles are what create the village or community. And that's the magic sauce, is the circles, those times in those circles. Inspiration and learning is access to skill-based tools, from virtual lessons from Harvard faculty on key issues facing the next generation of young leaders. They also benefit from mentors who will share their experiences. It's about inspiration. You share your story, and that helps the young lady say, well, if she could do it, I could do it. And then networking, engagement and network opportunities within and across countries and regions through spaces for young leaders to connect with one another, including an online platform linking membership circles, regional and global summits. For example, I have been blessed to be able to speak at the Botswana chapter, the Lesotho chapter, South Africa, Malawi, Zimbabwe, and in talks with hopefully being able to do something with the Pakistan chapter. So as you can see, your network widens up. Next slide, please. So mentorship format. The mentorship session format starts with the plenary. Everybody comes together. They have a speaker. They watch the online video. The speaker highlights their story. We like to get speakers from the neighborhood, from the community that the women and the girls are from, so that they can see it's about being aspirational. And then there's the mentorship circles that they go into with 5 to 10 girls. And then we start using those skills that they're learning of communication and negotiation, where girls now have to come into the second plenary and give feedback, to stand up and present what happened in their groups. And so, like I said, it's skill-based. It's an effective way of upskilling groups, retaining knowledge, and fostering a culture of knowledge sharing, okay? This form of mentorship helps to improve every participant's teamwork skills as well. And it's a good way to create inclusion. And it can also be done via Zoom, which is amazing. So you can have people all over the world joining in together. We'll go to the next one, please, Kayla. So let me walk you quickly through what happens over the 6 weeks, or if you decide every other weeks, but it's 6 modules basically. Each session is supported with a video from Harvard professors that is distributed to mentors and mentees pre-session, then discussed. It is a structured program. And there are also mentee and mentor handbooks to further solidify the learnings and the trainings. So we start with building trust, number one. And that's the creation of the circles, of the villages, okay? And what are they building trust in? They're building trust in themselves. You say building trust in you, building your trust in others. And sometimes that means learning to trust women again, because sometimes we feel we've been burned by our sisters. And number three, learning to trust the process, which is learning to trust that, you know, if you go out there and you put in the work, something good will come back. Then, of course, the second one is courageous leadership. And this is basically saying courage is not the absence of fear. It's about doing it afraid. You navigate from point to point. And so that they start identifying themselves as leaders. This is where they're encouraged to know their mission, invest in their gathering years, grow their village, and keep their eye on the bigger picture, because that's what helps you overcome the challenge and build the challenges and build resilience. And then the art of communication is learning about clarity, persuasion, and inspiration. This is where they start to learn to know their audience, know the why behind their what. This is where values are key. Learn how to tell a story and make a call to action. Have a key ask or request. Session 4 is skill-based. It's about negotiation, learning the BATNA, you know, and learning, you know, your best alternative to negotiated agreement. It's about breaking down some of the gender stereotypes around negotiation, because empathy does play an important role in negotiation, and women are more prone to empathy. It's about finding out your options, because remember, no go is also an option. You can also say this is as far as I go, and creating value, the abundancy mentality. It's about knowing that there's more than this option, and that a bigger pie can be shared. In all of these, we do a lot of role playing. So in negotiation, one of the keys they learn is about you. When you're about to negotiate, you've got to ask, what are your goals? You ask other, you know, O is about others, you know, who can help you achieve your goal, who can block you. And understanding is how to appeal to people of interest. What are their interests or goal? A fun thing that we do in here a lot of times is called the orange exercise. And it's basically you take an orange and you put it amongst the group of mentees and you say, right, you got 10 minutes to discuss what you as a group are going to do with this orange, and then come back. And that's where you start to hear how people's minds are being open to, okay, some people say, okay, we're going to share it 4 ways. Some person may say, no, I've got the flu, so I should be able to have the orange. I need the vitamin C. Somebody else may say, okay, I'm going to take the peels and make a cake out of it that we're going to sell. And then we're going to take the seeds and we're going to start an orange orchard, and on it goes. All the different ideas that you can have for an orange. So public service, this is where we put rubber to the road, you know, where we're saying, right, we're not doing leadership for leadership's sake. We're doing leadership for you to start finding your mission, and for you to now start moving into that mission, because this is about creating a pipeline of leaders in public sector, private sector, civil society, government, etc., and so forth. On boards, in management, elective offices, women setting up NGOs. It's about being in position to influence decisions, policy, resource allocation, huge one. And about, as I said, about mentees seeing their missions and acting upon it. You know, and this is where we tell them some things like, you know, women will be held to different standards to men, like we spoke about with the ex-PM Marion. And public service is about service to community. And women should not be afraid to step up. And that if you want to have impact, you have to have some form of influence, which is power. Influence is not necessarily a bad word. Finally, number 6 is ethics and values in decision making. And basically, this is about looking at your values and holding a litmus test. There's a lot of gray in this world, we know that. And it's not an issue of when you'll be tested as a leader, of if you'll be tested as a leader. It's about when you'll be tested as a leader. And as I tell the young girls, sometimes it's such an unfortunate thing. You did something 10 years ago, you've lived and you've almost forgotten about what it is you did. And some forensic accountant, for any forensic accountants, I'm sorry, I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying you guys are really good at what you do. So for some forensic accountant, years later, we'll find some anomaly and we'll be like, and they'll raise an audit query. And there goes your political career. There goes your career as a CEO, etc., from one gray area. So that's something to think about. And we do talk to the girls about different scenarios and debate different scenarios so they can see about these gray areas. So then the final, you can do the final slide. So the final thing is, how can you support G4G in its mission? Well, first, you can sign up as a mentor for one of the monthly training sessions via Zoom. They happen the last Saturday of every month. I'm also a trainer with that. I forgot to say that. And I'm also the trainer. I'm all over the place. But anyways, or you can join the RSA chapter, or join or start a chapter wherever you are. And then the second thing is you can be a donor or a friend of G4G, all of the chapters, and especially RSA. RSA is an NPO, so we rely on donations to support our mentoring activities. We also accept in-kind donations through your My School card, and give and gain. Number 3, you can become our champion. We recommend us to friends and family, etc., that need a mentoring program, to organizations you feel that would benefit from this. It helps to increase our visibility. Talk to your CSR unit at work. And finally, as a speaker, we always need women to speak at our different cohorts, either online or in person. You have a story to share that could change your life. So I'd really love to hear it. Thank you so much for your time with me today. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Duwa. And don't forget, guys, you can follow them on social chat channels as well, as you can with us. But if you want to find out more about G4G, this is one that's definitely touched my heartstrings, and why I jumped at the opportunity to share your story, Duwa, and that of G4G. I think it's such an incredible and powerful work that you guys are doing. So really, thank you so much for sharing. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. There we go. Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Now is the time. If you have any questions for our lovely Duwa about breaking barriers, about mentorship, about what G4G is up for, you have the space now. We have about 7 minutes left before our session ends. And I think from my side specifically, I just want to thank you, Duwa, for sharing your story. I think, like you were talking about how you discovered that you weren't the spider, but the sun. That struck a chord with me, because a couple of years ago, I did, through my previous boss, I did a Find Your Why session. It was over a couple of months, and my why is to be a light on the path of life to others, so they may never feel alone. So it just rang amazing. Like I was like sitting here and I was like, oh, okay, it's a real goosebumps moment. So I
light always finds light. Oh,
there we go. And thank you so much for sharing your light with us today. I think, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is not something that can be taken for granted, sharing your stories. And I think what we've done here at MasterStart in the last couple of sessions is really to share the stories of some incredible women, some incredible organizations, people who are making a difference. And it really isn't about, you said it's not about going to conquer that huge mountain of things, like let's go and try and get everything. I can't be everything to everyone. It's about taking hold and going, you know what, I'm going to do this one thing, and it's going to make a difference. Working smart, not hard, is what we do here in the team. So again, phenomenal. And I've got about 10 million notes on my book in front of me. And I'm definitely going to be doing the drawing exercise with the team later. But yeah, thank you for bringing the spirit of Ubuntu here with us, the spirit of community. Again, if you guys have any questions for Duwa, if you want to, you can find her on the socials, find them with their G4G handle on all the social channels. You can also email us, and we'll obviously get in contact with Duwa and share any information with her. And if you guys have any questions, you can also find us at masterstart.com, and you can pop us an email there. We'd be more than happy to share it. So someone says, may we have the slideshow? Do not fret, do not worry.
You'll get
I
the
will
funding.
share. I will share the recording. I will share the videos. Everything. You'll get everything, all in
And
a silver
yes.
platter in an email tomorrow.
And thank you so
Yeah,
much to everybody for
yes,
I just want to thank you for showing up, and thank
mm,
you for all of the comments in the chat. I really do appreciate. I'm glad that the information resonated with you, and it was really my honor sitting here today and telling you about something I'm so passionate about. So thank
mm,
you so much for that as well. To saying thank you back to you.
yeah,
And thank you, Michaela, for
yes,
helping me, and Jessime, who's in the background.
yes,
Just to let you all know, these things don't just happen on a whim. We've been working on this for quite a long time, for
yeah,
about 3 months. So
yeah.
thank you to everybody at MasterStart for giving me this platform, because it's been really, really, really good. Yes.
Yeah, well, it's entirely our pleasure, and again, I hope that we'll see you very soon. This isn't the end of the road with Jeff and Emma. I'm going to make a wink. But again, if you guys want to share this webinar with any of your colleagues, we will have it on our channels as well. View the recording, share the stories, share your stories. If there's
Yes.
anything we've learned from that, is just the power of sharing. And again, as you said, G4G, it's about sharing your story, and
Yes.
mentorship is just about sharing your knowledge through storytelling. And that's
Yes.
what we do here on the continent. We're really good at it, and it's just
We
something
are.
that's
That
uniquely
is,
ours, and I
yeah.
love that.
Yes, and the interesting part is because one of the founders was from Uganda. Part of that was the Afrocentric nature of the village and the circle, and we tell our stories, and
Mm,
in telling that story is how we gain our strength, and it's how we normalize things, because things that are in the dark, they
mm,
tend to stagnate, etc. But when the
yeah,
light comes into things, and you're shedding light on, this is what happens where we are, so much changes. And it's quite
mm,
interesting. One of the founders was saying that uh, when she was going to Niger, they were like, "This is not going to work here." And she was like, "Are you sure?" She's like, "It's not going to work here. People are not going to
yeah,
speak up. That's not our culture. That's not how it works." And it was one of the most powerful sessions, with all these stories coming out, because all
yeah,
that people want is the chance to
yeah,
tell their story. This is why every voice matters.
yeah,
And so I really encourage everybody, if you have your story, start telling that story, because you don't know the impact it's going to have on somebody. And
yeah,
for someone like me, who's like, "Yeah, I'm not telling my story. I'm staying in the background. I'm not interested." You know what? Everybody thinks they know my story. Let them know my story. I'm going to sit here quietly.
yeah,
I saw such a change when I started speaking up. And it turned my life inside out. And I
mm.
swear I wear brighter colors now too. But
I love it.
yeah. So it just goes to show how powerful storytelling can be. And like you
Yeah,
said, that is such a thread in our continent. We tell our stories.
yeah,
Don't stop telling your stories, please.
yeah. Absolutely. So it doesn't look like there's any questions for you, but that is not a problem. Again, you shared your light and your love with us today. But again, from all of us here at MasterStart, I just want to say thank you so much for showing up to our series. There will be more webinars on the way. You can be guaranteed of that. But for now, just a big thank you from all of us in the team and the marketing team. Thank you so much to Jasmine, who's been a rock and my partner in crime behind the scenes. So I hope that she feels that love today from everyone. And yeah, I hope you all have a fantastic week ahead. It's a short one here in Cape Town, obviously a 4-day week, but we take a big deep breath, we take a cup of tea, and we head on. But I'm going to wave because I make it weird at the end of sessions. I'm going to wave and say bye. But thank you so
Bye
much for
bye.
joining, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, Duwa.
Bye bye. Thank you to everybody from wherever you joined from.